As far back as I can remember, I've had a love affair with the country of Japan. If you've been watching my series of tips and tricks for your first trip to Japan, then you know that this was my fourth trip to the land of the rising sun. In the lead up to the trip and making the videos, I started thinking about what sparked my appreciation, or as my wife would say, obsession with Japan. And throughout the planning of this trip and making the videos, I think my appreciation can be traced back to three moments in my childhood that sparked my imagination and made Japan seem like a mythical land of wonder. That first moment should come as no surprise, but it was one Christmas morning, probably 88 or 89, when I got my very own Nintendo Entertainment System. Like any child of the 80s, I was obsessed with Nintendo. Previously, my parents had a ColecoVision, and I had played games like Donkey Kong, Ladybug, and War Games on that, but the NES, this was leaps and bounds more than the ColecoVision and Atari 2500. This was something out of the future. When I found out that it was made in Japan, I began picturing some sort of highly advanced place akin to the Jetsons or something. Also, watching Blade Runner didn't hurt my imagination of what Tokyo was like either. Also, growing up near Washington, D.C., where we don't have skyscrapers, seeing images of the megalopolis that is Tokyo seems so wondrous. The second moment came just a few years later when my dad took me to the cinema to see the new Tom Selleck comedy, Mr. Baseball. For the time, it combined all of my favorite things. Baseball, Tom Selleck, we were big Magnum PI fans, and one of my new favorites, Japan. This was one of those fish out of water movies that was extremely popular in the 80s and 90s, and this was kind of the perfect combination. Big league ball player, past his prime, has to go to Japan to continue his career. Up until this movie's release, I had just thought of Japan as a country of tech giants like Nintendo, Sega, and Sony. I had no idea this country had a love affair with my favorite sport, nor did I have any knowledge of the more rural areas as well as shrines and cuisine Japan offered. At a time where Hollywood could be very culturally insensitive, especially with comedies, this movie gets a lot right about Japan. Several faux pas I mentioned in my 15 things not to do in Japan happen in this movie, and the Japanese people in the film react appropriately to Tom Selleck. For a fish out of water comedy, the movie shows a lot of restraint and respect towards Japan. I think a future video might be in order where I talk about the film on a deeper level. Anyways, seeing the country's love of baseball, not to mention seeing a side of Japan that was outside the realm of video games and tech, was eye-opening. It started to round out my knowledge and appreciation for the Japanese people and their culture. They were more than just people who made video games in a very young mind now. The following year came the third event. A new kid showed up at school. His name was Jason. His dad had been stationed in Okinawa, Japan, and they had gotten back to the States. Because of this deployment, Jason had brought back a vast amount of anime and video game goodies. I remember one morning Jason brought with him to class a binder of Dragon Ball Z cards. Keep in mind this was 1993 or 94, so Dragon Ball Z hadn't yet come to the US. Looking at these foiled cards of Super Saiyans and androids and such just blew my young mind. Anime was something I really had never thought about. I watched Voltron and Speed Racer, but I didn't have a clue they came from Japan. These Dragon Ball cards, along with some of the VHS tapes Jason brought back with him, was my very first glimpse into anime. DBZ was so fast-paced and frantic, it was nothing like I had ever seen before. It didn't hurt that when Goku went Super Saiyan, his hair turned blonde like mine. Also through Jason, I began learning more about the Japanese culture and its uniqueness. From here, my love and appreciation for Japan just continued to grow, from the launch of Toonami on Cartoon Network to Pokemon to video games becoming more mainstream. My wonderment continued into my teenage years, and I knew one day I had at least to go once in my life. And now, as I just finished up my fourth trip to Japan, it is no longer a mythical place, but it's a place that you can actually visit and enjoy for many reasons. You can go for the sights, the history, the food, the anime, the video games. It's unique, but also in many ways it feels like home.